Welcome to the Unraveling the Scriptures channel. Given the current context between Israel and Palestine, as well as the situation in the Gaza Strip, many individuals have expressed curiosity about what is happening in the Middle East. Furthermore, many people have raised questions about biblical prophecies, specifically those mentioned in the book of Ezekiel, concerning Gog and Magog. In this video, I intend to address these recent events and the ongoing conflict, as well as explore the possibility that Gog and Magog may be approaching. Therefore, I invite you to follow the video until the end to obtain more information about this, and we will look for the answer. Would the Gog and Magog prophecy be Israel and Palestine? In recent days, especially in the Israel region, with a focus on Gaza, extremely terrifying events have occurred. This is primarily due to the intense attacks that the Israeli population has recently faced. Many people have been closely following the current situation, sometimes expressing opinions that do not correspond to the reality of the events in Israel. Some go so far as to claim that these events are the fulfillment of sacred scripture prophecies. There are even those who mention Gog and Magog. However, it is relevant to question whether the current events in Israel and Palestine, along with the growing tensions and conflicts, are indeed related to Gog and Magog. For those who are not familiar with the term, Gog and Magog essentially represent the last battle or the final battle, also known as the War of Armageddon. This battle will involve the nation of Israel, its territory, and various nations around the world, culminating in a terrible and grand war called Armageddon. However, as we examine the text of the book of Ezekiel in chapter 38, it is worth questioning whether the current scenario truly fits the prophecies of Gog and Magog. In the upcoming readings of Ezekiel, chapter 38, I will seek to provide detailed answers on this matter. In Ezekiel chapter 38, it says the following: "And it came to pass that this word of the Lord came to me, O son of man, set your face against Gog, of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, prophesy against him in these terms, Thus says Yahweh, the Lord God, Behold, I set myself against you, O Gog, prince and leader of Meshech and Tubal. And I will turn you about and put hooks into your jaws, and I will bring you out, and all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed in full armor, a great host, all of them with buckler and shield, wielding swords. Persia, Kush, and Put are with them, all of them with shield and helmet, Gomer and all his hordes, Beth-Togarmah from the uttermost parts of the north with all his hordes, many peoples are with you. Be ready and keep ready, you and all your hosts that are assembled about you, and be a guard for them. After many days you will be mustered. In the latter years you will go against the land that is restored from war, the land whose people were gathered from many peoples upon the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. Its people were brought out from the peoples and now dwell securely, all of them. You will advance, coming on like a storm, you will be like a cloud covering the land. So, thus says Yahweh, the eternal and sovereign God, on that day, thoughts of greed will come to your mind, and you will devise an evil plan. Then you will say, I will invade a land of peaceful villages, I will attack a peaceful and unsuspecting people who have no walls, gates, or bars to protect them. I will plunder, loot, and raise my arm against their rebuilt ruins and against all the people gathered from the nations, rich in cattle and goods, dwelling at the center of the land, which is called the navel of the earth. Sheba, Dedan, the merchants of Tarshish, and all their young lions will question you, Have you come to take plunder? Have you gathered your assembly to carry off prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to seize a great amount of spoil? The essential verses to understand the entire chapter of Ezekiel, chapter 38, include verses 2, 3, 5, 6, and also verse 13. These verses contain the keys to understanding which nations and peoples are destined to attack Israel as part of the Great Alliance, triggering a war that will initially be against Israel. First, let's examine verse 2, where the Son of Man, referring to Ezekiel, is instructed to turn his gaze to the land of Magog. Magog is identified as the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Biblically, we can understand that the prophet Ezekiel is referring to the peoples descended from Magog, and for this, it is important to consult Genesis, chapter 10, which describes the genealogy of the nations descending from the three lineages of Noah that repopulate the world after the flood. It is relevant to remember that all these peoples are descendants of Noah. When Magog, Meshech, and Tubal are mentioned, we are actually referring to Slavic nations. These terms represent nations of Slavic descent, particularly the people of Meshech, who are associated with Moscow, ancient Russia, or at least the peoples who inhabited that region. Similarly, Magog, Meshech, and Tubal are ancestors of other Slavic nations, such as Russia, which originated from Meshech, and Ukraine, associated with Magog. In the Bible, when a character is mentioned as the ancestor of a population, that population has brotherly peoples of the same ethnic origin. Therefore, Magog, Meshech, and Tubal gave rise to other peoples of the same race or ethnicity who will also be involved in the context of Gog and Magog. In broad terms, the Slavic peoples, whose origin goes back to Magog, Meshech, and Tubal, primarily include Russians and Ukrainians, but also encompass Belarusians, Poles, Kashubians, Czechs, Slovaks, Sorbs, and others. Furthermore, there are other Slavic groups originating from these same three characters, such as Bulgarians, Serbs, Croats, Slovenes, Bosnians, and Montenegrins. All of these are descendants of Magog, Meshech, and Tubal. When the text mentions these three characters, it is actually referring to all these groups and peoples. Therefore, for the Gog and Magog war to occur, all these groups, who are descendants of the characters mentioned in verse 2, need to be present in the conflict against Israel. Continuing with the detailed analysis of the peoples who will participate in the great battle in the Gog and Magog war, verse 5 introduces different terms that are names of other descendants of the sons of Noah. In verse 5, it is stated as follows: Persians, Ethiopians, Kush, and those from Put with them, all with shield and helmet. So, who are the Persians, the Putites, and the Kushites? To begin with the Persians, according to the biblical scriptures, Paras or Madai are the ancestors of the Aryan people, specifically the Medites descended from Madai. The term Paras refers to ancient Persia, where the Persian people currently mainly inhabit the countries of Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. These three countries, therefore, represent the main nations descended from Madai and Paras of Persia that will be involved in this battle or war. Additionally, we have the term Kush, which is widely mentioned in the sacred scriptures. In both Hebrew and ancient Aramaic, Kush literally means black or dark. Whenever the Bible refers to Kush, it is mentioning African countries such as Ethiopia, Sudan, and other nations on the African continent. In other words, Kush represents the African nations that will oppose the people of Israel in the battle of Gog and Magog. Nations with their roots in Kush include Sudan, South Sudan, the Central African Republic, Congo, Uganda, Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Zambia, among other African countries. These are truly African nations with roots in the lineage of Kush, which literally means black. In addition to these African nations, it is quite likely that India will also play a significant role in this great war, as South India has an ancient Cushitic heritage. Therefore, in addition to the African nations, India may be involved in this epic conflict. We should also consider the term Put or Phut, which is mentioned in Ezekiel, chapter 38. For those who are not familiar, Libya is identified as the Libyans, who are descendants of Put. Besides Libya, other countries in the region, such as Niger, Chad, and Nigeria, are also descendants of Put, who is one of the sons of Ham. Now, by carefully examining Ezekiel 38, we can recognize which nations and peoples will be involved in this great war in the valley of Megiddo, the Gog and Magog war. In verse 6, we find the following passage: Gomer and all its troops, the house of Togarmah from the far north and all its troops, many nations with you. Looking at the end of the verse, it becomes evident that many nations will stand alongside Gog in the great battle. Let's begin with the name Gomer and its troops. To understand who Gomer is, we need to go back to the book of Genesis, in chapter 10. According to Genesis 10, Gomer is the firstborn son of Japheth and was the ancestor of various European populations. Therefore, European nations will be present in this great battle against Israel. The nations descended from Gomer are identified through his 3 sons. The first son is Ashkenaz, the second is Riphath, and the third is Togarmah. For those familiar with Jewish history, Ashkenazi refers to Ashkenaz. Biblically, Ashkenaz is considered the ancestor of the Germanic peoples. This means that Germanic nations, such as Germany, Norway, and even Britain, which includes the English, a tribe of Ashkenazic descent, will be united in this great battle against Israel. Therefore, all nations of Germanic descent, including Germany, Norway, and others, will be together in this conflict against Israel. In addition to them, the term Riphath is also mentioned in Genesis chapter 10, representing the offspring of Gomer, so Gomer and all his troops will be numerous. Essentially, Riphath is understood as the ancestor of the Celtic peoples, including the Irish, Scots, Welsh and other European groups of ancient Celtic descent. These are the nations that will stand out in the Gog and Magog war. Besides Ashkenaz and Riphath, the name of the third son of Gomer, Togarmah, is also mentioned, representing nations in the Far East, such as Mongolia and parts of the Chinese region. To complete the analysis of verse 13, we find the mention of notable terms and names in the sacred scriptures, namely, Sheba, Dedan, and the merchants of Tarshish or Tarsus, with all their towns. For those unfamiliar with who Sheba is in the sacred scriptures, Sheba refers to the ancient kingdom of Sheba, descended from Shem, from the Semitic lineage. The Sabaeans, who inhabited southern Arabia, currently represent countries like Oman and Yemen, and they will also be involved in the conflict. Dedan is associated with a Kushite nation from the lineage of Kush and, by extension, the descendants of Ham, who will also be present in the war. As for Tarshish or Tarsus, Tarsus, Kittim, and Dodanim are largely peoples of Japhethic descent. Tarshish is often identified as the ancient Tartessians, referring to ancient peoples of the Iberian Peninsula. This may represent the nations of Spain and Portugal, which are likely to be involved in the conflict. These verses indicate a gathering of nations from different lineages that will play roles in the war described in the sacred scriptures. It is of utmost importance to dedicate time to the study of prophecies in order to truly understand what is involved in the Gog and Magog scenario. This allows us to avoid being deceived by messages and videos that claim what is happening in Israel already represents Gog and Magog, which is not in line with reality. I hope this video has contributed to a better understanding of the biblical passages. May God bless you. See you soon.